Shaman Oaks, exploring the rabbit hole.
1980, I was 21 years old. I went ice climbing in Western Canada and Banff Provincial Park. I was an outdoors guy, National Ski Patrol, been snow caving since I was a Boy Scout, mountain climbing, rock climbing, first time ice climbing. Had a lead climber who was experienced. We went up a world famous climb, maybe 500 feet, three pitches up, and made a mistake with my equipment to begin with. Thought that I could climb with an axe and a hammer at the same rate of speed as other people with a couple of axes, which turned out to be false. And so our climb was very slow. And by the time we reached the top of the pitch, it was sunset. Temperature dropped as the sun went down. Hypothermia set in immediately. We were in a desperate situation and knew it. Decided that we were going to either die trying to stay warm there, canoodled up against the mountain, or die trying to get off. And we decided that we would try to get off the mountain. And so it was a harrowing night, frostbite, hypothermia to the extreme. And on our last pitch, just before dawn, after fighting our way across the mountain all night, I succumbed to the final stages of hypothermia. We were clipped into the mountain on harnesses, on straps with iron pins and rings into the granite. We were off the ice. And Tim was to my left, my lead partner, my leading partner, and my friend. And my temperature soared on my skin, which basically meant that my core was flooding my extremities to prevent them from falling off. And it creates a false sense of heat, which, even though I knew better, having been trained as a first responder, I unzipped my coat and it's sub-zero out. And my temperature core dropped even faster. And I began to fall asleep. I'd wake up after having collapsed to the rock, try to pull on the stuck rope again and again, but I'd let go of one of the ends of the rope and the other was tied to me and I couldn't free it. And to collect it would have meant climbing back up and likely falling 150 feet. So we left the rope as it was, and I tried to tug on it, but I kept falling asleep. I pulled myself back up this last time after falling asleep, and as I stood up, I got what's called tunnel vision. Peripheral vision began to fill in with black in a circle and faded to black very rapidly to out. And I was in darkness, but unlike falling asleep, maintained my consciousness. You know, when you fall asleep, you lose your consciousness, but I knew that I was awake and I was in this darkness and I felt myself collapse, but I didn't feel myself hit the rock. And suddenly in front of me was a great expanse of even darker darkness that extended as far as I could see and as wide as I could see and far, far in the distance. And I'd never seen anything like it. It's not just like standing on a wicked dark night looking out at the ocean on a starless, moonless night. It's like different than that. It's that plus times 1,000. And so way far, far in the almost infinite distance, I saw and I'm going to speak in metaphor now because I really don't have any other tools than that. So I saw like a pinprick of light that came rushing toward me that filled from a great distance faster than the speed of light and infilled the entire visual that I had. But it wasn't just light, it was like an amorphous intelligence that communicated directly to me without any sort of matter. There was no physicality to this. And it said to me without language, "I'm taking you." And I resisted because I didn't know what was going on. I was, can't say I was frightened, but I was strongly resistant because I didn't understand the circumstance. And this thing rushed right to me and communicated, "I'm taking you," and plucked me right out of myself and carried me up through with a proverbial tunnel, but the tunnel was wide and narrow at the same time, like infinitely wide and small enough to contain us, but not one or the other. It was both. And this entity carried me, and I was comforted. I was unafraid. I was confused, but I was not lost. And I suddenly emerged into this greater infinite darkness that was also illuminated. So these two things at once, and the entity, the angel, vanished, and I was left alone as what I describe as an orb of consciousness that's 10,000 times bigger than my body. And I was completely content. My first reaction was, this is me. Now I remember. How did I ever think I was that thing? This is who I am. And I was I had no matter, no energy, no atoms, no molecules, no photons, no electrons, and that stuff. I was just consciousness, but it also contained all of my senses. So I was brain, I was thinking, I was eyeball and ear and sensories, but I was less Peter, and I could see in every direction at once. And there was like a portal opened in front of me if I had a front, which I didn't, but like a doorway or a gateway. But it opened up into this long arcing, infinitely arcing tunnel that was somehow inside of and separate from, but part of this greater eternity that I was in. And there was this flowing sheen that was transparent, I could see through, and translucent, I could see the sheen at the same time. And I, it was a flow, and I touched this flow with my self, my soul, consciousness, and it was all life. It was all life of all the universe and all the universes and all life there ever was and will be. And it flowed into me, and I tell this like in a sequence, but this is a place of timelessness, which means all time and no time, all time in one space and no time whatsoever. So it's really hard to describe it. I choose to describe it sequentially, and if only for my own sanity. So I touched this thing, and it inflowed into me, and it called my name, but not Peter. It called the name of my soul, that in which I could hear the creation of my being from aeons ago. I could see the long tail of my existence, of my soul, which was not Peter, and I could see the very creation of myself as a, a photon that was wave and particle as part of the light itself, but separate and the same as, but distinct from. And I could see that I had other lives, but I couldn't see what they were, and I couldn't see whether they were sequential or simultaneous. But I also knew that they weren't me, that the real me was the soul that contained them. They were little tiny, like toothpicks, stuck inside this much larger, uh, everlasting soul. And I heard my name called. I saw myself as creator. Pardon me. I'm sorry. I saw myself as creature, made even in my soul substance, in my consciousness, by creator who I could not see, who spoke inside me, who then showed me all of the pain that I'd given away in my entire life from the point of view, life review. But mine, which is different than others, mine was I suffered all the pain I gave away in my entire life from the point of view of the people I gave it to. I intended to give it to, and I didn't intend to give it to. And I felt that. I felt their pain, and it turns out that all the pain that I gave them was about 10,000. I keep using 10,000 because it's like some huge unimaginable number that you multiply all the pain you ever gave away to somebody times, and I suffered all of that, their pain, plus times 10,000. Turns out that I gave it to me, and that they suffered a little bit. I suffered mostly, and it was juxtaposed to all my reasons for causing them pain. And the voice was saying inside me without sound, no gender, no language, I love you. It was showing me love. It was bringing me into love. It was expressing to me eternal love it's unimaginable, incomprehensible. I love you. I've always known you. I've always known these things about you. I've known you since you were created. I've known the long tail of your soul. I know what you were like to be a human being in this life. I love you as you are. I made you. I've always known you. I've always loved you. And I was going through this suffering of all the suffering I gave away, but I was also being, and I call it my own hell. I created my own hell, like Jacob Marley and the Christmas, link by link. And I also judged myself as shameful, not because of what I had done, because it was also shown simultaneously that it wasn't my fault that I caused pain. That's a natural outgrowth of being a human being in this world. It's just the way it is. And every human being causes pain to other human beings and to themselves. And that's just the way it is. And that's a known thing by the divine. God knows this about us. And so I carried home to heaven with me all the love that had been given to me and all the love that had been given away, that I gave away is like a treasure. And somehow it helped me turn my inner eye to the holy divine, and was, I don't know, burned clean by the divine fire of purgative love. When I had no more things I did not need. It wasn't like they were bad. It was like, you don't need them, and here's how to get rid of them. And once they were gone, I was filled with this combination of truth, joy, knowledge, bliss, understanding, compassion, hope, adoration, awe, paradise. The list is long, but they weren't all separate things. They're all one thing. And the one word that I would use to encapsulate it all, two words: beauty and love. Emphasis on the last, and it goes on from there. I mean, I could stop right there, or I could tell you how I came back and what happened next. But
I've always been curious of how long was that? Like, how long do you think you were gone, and how long did it take? How long did you feel like you were gone?
Well, I don't know either. I didn't have a watch on me, and I went to a place of timelessness. And so what that means, it could have been a second, could have been 5 minutes. I don't know. And I didn't tell Tim, my partner, what had happened to me, but I was gone long enough that he believed I was dead. That's all I can say about it. And when I came back, I chose to come back. I was welcome to stay in heaven, but I chose to come back. And when I came back, he told me that he thought I was dead, that I had been dead. You'd been dead. You were dead.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If you die, I die, which is really was his point.
And well, can you talk about that part about how you were given a choice to come back?
Yeah, I said, once I was infilled with oneness of being, this unity, I was still separate. Okay, I was, as Genesis says, like I was an image of the divine. I wasn't the totality of the divine, but I was definitely like the divine. I was an image of it, like a subgroup of it, of the same substance, but yet less than. And I hadn't gone through the tunnel. And I said, so, I haven't gone the secondary tunnel. All right. I haven't gone through the portal yet. Do I have to go? And God's like, you don't have to go. I said, well, I've got a reason to stay. My parents were suffering. My sister had run away and vanished from our life and broke my mom essentially. And in the instant of a thought, we were swept across the vastness of the universe and brought into the kind of in this dimension of this universe, but also outside of it. I could see all of Earth all at once, all mountains, rivers, streams, oceans, fish, in particular, and birds and animals and trees and plants and everything. But in particular, I could see human beings. And the human beings were 7 billion of us, and everyone was covered by a singular veil. The veil kind of trailed over everything in the world, and the human beings couldn't see outside the veil, and which is what I could see. And the voice said to me, in the way that I love you now, you know I've always loved you and will love you. And this love is I can't tell you how rich it is. It's any words utterly fail. It's all of the universes all put together into one black hole, like crushed down. That's how much, and that's not even enough. And um, and no one could see it on Earth. They were all going about their daily lives, being utterly beloved, in particular by the divine, just like me, just like I knew that I was, and that I knew that all because I was healed and well and without suffering. I didn't have a body to suffer. I didn't have any. I didn't have any suffering at all. And the voice said, "In the way that I love you now, I've always loved you, and I love everyone in particular, including your parents, whose faces I could see in particular in the time of the world." And I could see in their souls and their faces their suffering. And I knew that from the duration, from the time at which I died that night to the time at which they died, their suffering would be increased exponentially. 2 kids lost. And so, even though I knew that all would be well for them when they died, I chose to not let them go through that. And so I said, can I come back here? If I go back to life, can I come back here? And the voice said, yes, but we want you to stay, but you can go back. And I said, well, I can go back and help my parents. They won't suffer as much. I choose to live my life. And the voice said, you won't live your life, and send me back.
One, how convinced are you that it was real and not just like some hallucination?
It was self-evidently so to me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to turn out there was some kind of biological thing in my brain, but that's not the way I experienced it. It's more real. It was more real to me than anything I've ever experienced in my life before or since.
Right. And I love in your book how you told your congregation that you don't have faith. Can you say that part real quick? Why you don't have faith in God?
Sure. So for your audience, I'm an ordained clergy person, and I served congregational churches in New England for quite a number of years, decades. And the day I came back from my death, the moment I came back, all faith was erased, all belief was erased, not just in religion, but all belief and all culture. It's completely, I guess I look at it like an anthropologist might, all culture from kind of the outside. Oh, that's nice that you've got that gray sweater hoodie on. I got one like that too, so I can fit in. So and I do actually have one. So I came back with no belief in culture or religion or in God, because to me, God is not a thing to be believed in. I know God is real. I know where I'm from. I know where I'm going. But more importantly, I know that I'm known by the knower of all. And I can't ever turn away from that. It's not something that ever shuts off. Even when I'm asleep, it's still going. And so in addition to having no belief and no faith, I don't have any doubt. I am doubtless and completely unafraid of death, because I know where I'm going.
Yeah, to me, that's one of the most beautiful things about people that have had the near-death experiences. They just come back just knowing, and I think that's such a great gift. But why do you? Or I love in your book you say that it's like you don't believe in trees and birds, like they exist. You don't have to have faith in them or believe in them. You know they exist.
Right, exactly. So I don't have to believe that this glass exists and that water exists. We take it for granted. We know it exists. That was the same way, a similar way to which the divine presented itself as self-evidently so. And the reality, the Hindus talk about Maya, illusion. It's like living in an illusion for me. That this is the place that I have to I struggle. So you say it's quite the blessing to know, and it is. Okay, there's a lot of benefits, but there's deficits too. I live non-attached to pretty much everything. I mean, sure, I have likes and dislikes, and when my favorite mug smashes to the floor when I drop my coffee in the morning and the handle breaks off, I'm like, I had that mug for 30 years. But it's not real. I know it's not real. I know it's all transitory and temporary, and that I am too.
Okay. think it's a very important thing that a lot of people talk about when they experience this, is they come back. I don't know if depressed is the right word, but a longing to go back.
Yeah, those are I did in a lot, and yeah, depression. I mean, I had depression that was physiological. I mean, it developed. I longed to go back so much that I immediately regretted my decision.
Wow.
By the
Yeah.
time I started having the mental capacity to consider what I had done and the choice I had made, I made a huge mistake coming back. All I wanted to do was go home. It's like living in a two-dimensional black and white world here,
Right.
compared to multicolor, multisensory VR immersion there. And so once you've been in that place, coming here, as beautiful as it is, and I live in an extraordinarily beautiful place on purpose, so that I can get as close to beauty as I possibly can. But even that, it's just like, oh well, that's really pretty, but not the same as ultimate divine beauty.
Yeah, I love how you said also that like sunrises are ugly. Are they still ugly, or were they just ugly for a while?
They were ugly for a while. There was well, the first year was very difficult. The second morning, the first morning we woke up. Um, was it that very first morning? Geez, the very first morning after the climb, we drove and we slept that night. And then the next morning, when I woke up after totaling the car, and having to hitchhike back to Bozeman with all my gear, Tim took a bus, and with other gear, I watched the sunrise, and it was really beautiful, but not at all. It was like watching a cartoon. It was like being in a cartoon. Only I wasn't just in the cartoon, watching the cartoon. I was the cartoon. Like my body was the cartoon, and my thoughts were the cartoon, and all of my senses were the cartoon, and the cartoon was outside of me and inside of me, and it was super confusing. And all my soul wanted was to be back in the oneness of being. And now here I am in this broken apart place where all the love and the beauty and the truth and the hope and the joy, or it's all fragmented here. But so is everything else. It's not just those things. Everything is fragmented here. Everything is not in union with the divine. The light pervades all things at all times, but it's still fractured here. I live in a fractured body in a fractured world, and all I wanted was wholeness and oneness, which I know I will have again, because it was promised to me.